Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Today we are with Jen Lee, who is a two-time Paralympian, two-time gold medalist, is the current starting goalie of the Sled hockey team, the U.S. Paralympic Sled hockey team that is going for its fourth gold medal in a row. Jen, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's an honor, and thank you for even considering me to be on your podcast.
Oh no, this is so cool. I am so excited. I mean, you guys are going for your fourth gold medal in a row. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's definitely a very, very surreal type of experience, and obviously very an honor to be part of that, because just the fact that us being on this team and into the history of this team, there's a lot of great players right before us, and just knowing the fact that we're going to be going for the fourth medal, it's something that I think no one has done in the history of our sport. And able to accomplish that definitely takes a lot of hard work, and it's something for us for sure. It's back of our mind, but we know the focus is it's one day at a time. That's for sure.
Well, that's the way that all sports work, one day at a time. It's interesting. 2002 was my last games. So my last winter games was 2002, and the sled hockey team won the gold medal in 2002. But the only reason they were in the tournament is because they were hosting the tournament.
Yes, correct. A little bit fun fact. I did a little bit of research paper on the team, or how the USA sled hockey started when I went to school at UT, at University of Texas. And it's crazy because they were in Nagano in 98, and they did not have the fully funded support from the NGB, the non-government bodies. And they pretty much had to fight their own ways, or raise monies and everything else to go to Japan and play. So in 2002, when they won, it was definitely still a team that was not fully, endorsed or sponsored by an NGB official. And when they won, it definitely has changed the persona and the route for USA sled hockey team for sure. Yeah, for the rest of us.
You've had a bit of a circuitous route to get to this point. So born in Taiwan, right?
Yep. I was, I like to joke, made in Taiwan. I was made in Taiwan. Yes.
When did you come to the States?
Came into the stateside when I was in 1995, when I was about 8 years old. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you were about 8 years old. So at this point, do you consider yourself Taiwanese? Do you consider yourself American? I mean, you served in the military as well, which I would imagine would cement a lot of your American ties. But how do you consider yourself?
Well, as 8 years old, for me, I definitely didn't even think it through or what I was. For me, it was just immigrating to a totally different foreign country, a nation where I had no idea except watching from from TV, the Disneyland, the pizza, the hamburgers, and all that good stuff. And I was definitely very excited to go to the United States, but I really had no knowledge or a lot of different things of what's going to happen ahead of me. So for me, I think just to, as a kid at that time, I'm definitely was just a regular kid. I was excited to know what was going to happen, once we get to the stateside or to mainland. Mm-hmm.
And you said you've maintained the ability to converse in Mandarin Chinese as well, right?
Yeah, correct. For me, we continue. I grew up with two older sisters, my parents, and we spoke Mandarin throughout the entire of my adulthood, childhood as well. When I enlisted in the Army at 18, even though I was doing basic training or in the southern states and all that good stuff, but over the years, either on the phone or emails or mails and all that stuff, we always continue to speak in Mandarin Chinese, because my parents, that was like that's their main language too as well. So I always try to communicate that way, in that sense. So yeah.
Do your parents, are they able to speak English pretty well too, or is it really Chinese that is the common language for you guys?
My dad was definitely more fluent or better as far as speaking English wise. My mom was one that was picking up a little bit slower. She had to learn as we had to learn, as me and my sister once we came to the stateside. But my dad had a different for his education, he was able to speak and learn English, growing up in his native land and everything else too. So yeah, it's a little bit of difference. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, this is one of those things that looking at, because you're going to Beijing and going to
Yes.
Beijing, we were talking about the host team in hockey gets a berth, right? So the Chinese will have a team, right? I'm assuming a sled hockey team.
Yes, they're the hosts, so they automatically have the team like you just mentioned. So they actually were in the C pool and then went to the B pool, and prior to the pandemic. So for 4 years now, 5 years, I would say, whenever the Chinese with China got the bid to host the games, they started investing the sled hockey program or the Paralympic programs. And they have good Chinese players. We've seen them watching them compete as well in the B pool, and they're up and coming as well. But as far as we know, before the pandemic, how they are now, where they are, we have no idea until we're going to play them in Beijing. Hopefully,
well,
yeah.
That's always the big question with the Chinese, isn't it? That they're sort of in their own little world there, and they could go from not having a good team to having the best team in the world, possibly. I mean, we've seen this in some other sports where they've emerged really quickly, but at least you'll be able to understand what they're saying when you're out there on the ice. You're like, you can infiltrate them in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily infiltrate, but for sure, if there's little things that they, communication is a big part of our sports, especially on the ice. Where for me, I'm a very vocal guy in net, so I definitely communicate with my defense a lot. So it's the same thing as I'm sure they will talk about, how they're able to move the puck or a different little things that you'll pick up on the ice. But so if you put it that way, I guess it helps us team as I have a little advantage if we do play against them. Or I can just maybe just they're not even talking about hockey. They're maybe just talking about what is their favorite food or they want to eat at the Paralympic Village later or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you could sort of shock them, right? Like, hey, I'm going to move you out of my crease right now. And they're like, huh? What? You just said that in Chinese. This
Right. And to believe it or not, I'm probably going to do some chirping, in Mandarin, and see how that goes. Pick up the little lingos, what they say, and I'll say it right back or what the lingos or the little chirp that I pick up while I was in Taiwan and little things. So I think it's going to be fun. I think it'd be cool to experience that when we cross that bridge.
Which is great. So you graduated from high school and then went into the military. What made you want to go into the military when you left high school?
Yeah, for me, it was always military was always something that I wanted to do. It's something that when I was little, I wanted to become like a GI Joe, and the military fascinated me from soldiers jumping out of an airplane to war movies I grew up with. But it was not really until September 11, 2001, where I was a sophomore in high school, and it was the first time when, watching the plane hitting the World Trade Centers, the Pentagon, and also the plane that landed and crashed in Pennsylvania. It was the first time that I felt, and to be honest, that I felt like, wow, like as American as a whole, we as America came together. Because coming to the stateside, I was still something we just talked about. I had no idea what my identity is. I was still going through phases and transitioning as an immigrant kid to learning the culture, adapting to the culture of the United States of being an American, and that right there itself made me realize, wow, this is something that I want to get into, because this happened to us, and want to see if I can do something about it.
So did you sign up like as soon as you could, kind of thing, like 18 years old, this is it, I'm going in, and which branch of the military did you go into?
Yeah, I actually did. So sophomore year, when it happened, by junior year, I actually enlisted. So they call it a delayed entry program. I enlisted while I was at 17. There was a lot of complication with that with my parents as well. So something we can talk about or not. But I wanted, again, like the movies and everything else. And I realized there was really two branches I wanted to that narrow it down. I couldn't swim, so I wasn't going to join the Navy. And I felt like Air Force, it's a rumor, but I just felt like I didn't know enough about being in the Air Force, or maybe of all the four branches, Air Force is a little bit soft. Out of all 4 or 5 branches, I'm sorry, the Coast Guard, can't forget about the Coast Guard. And so it was down to the Marine or the Army. And the Marines, I love their uniform, their dress blues. But the Army just had this like different type of swag where you can be all you can be. And I was like, that's it. I want to enlist in the United States Army.
So what did that mean for you? The idea of being all that you can be. What did you expect out of it? What did you want to get from yourself?
Well, for me, it was definitely, I was at a point in high school where I knew, I got into sports. I'm always a big sports enthusiast, participants, and a fan of all different types of sports. And for me, I was playing basketball on the high school team as well, along running track and field and tennis. And there was just something that I knew the military could give me, also the discipline, as far as like not just being an athlete. And for me, I wanted to do something challenging, because sports always brings that different type of challenges for you as well, So that kind of really just made me want to understand that, hey, maybe this will give me more than what I have right now, or what I'm thinking, and everything else goes.
Some challenges that are greater than the ones that you would seek for yourself, putting you in that position where you had to figure out how good you could really be.
For sure, because at the same time, I didn't, growing up as a Asian Americans, or as a the Chinese, Taiwanese cultural background, I'm not sure how familiar about this particular side, but like, your parents are putting a lot of emphasis in you becoming, be educated, right? But not only in education, but you got to go to a good school afterwards. You got to study your butt off. And then you're not chasing your dream. You're chasing career that's gonna make you money, like becoming a doctor, becoming an engineer, something like a high standard of, you got to be somebody. But for me, grew up in the inner city school, and doing different things, listen to, or hanging out with different type of people. I definitely did not find colleges seriously, and I definitely was on my way to just kind of like, I'm just gonna sham this thing, and until I figure out what I want to do, and that itself kind of like was like saying, hey, maybe military is the answer, war can be the answer for making me a little bit more mature and all that stuff. I don't know.
So was this the conflict you were talking about with your parents, where you decided to go into the military and they wanted you to go to college and start your pre-med or your pre-law or whatever you needed to do?
Oh, for sure. It was huge, because at that time, by sophomore year, junior year, going on junior year and senior year, all my cousins in the Bay Area, my relatives and all that, distance cousin and whatnot, they all had kind of like getting into like UC Berkeley, or going to UC Davis, or becoming something great. And, we're at this like family gathering, right, where everybody's like talking about, their kids and all these things. And even my sister at that time was getting admitted to San Jose State as a business major and all these things. And then, you have uncles and aunts talk about, oh, how about your son? How about her? How about Jen? And I remember my dad would just laugh it off, like, oh, like they just couldn't answer him. Like, we have no idea what my son's gonna do. And even me, like, I will tell my cousins around my age, is like, oh, I heard you play basketball. That's so cool. What are you gonna do? And I'm over here like, yeah, I'm trying to, get some scholarships and stuff. Like, no, I wasn't gonna get no scholarships. I had no work ethic. Yeah, so I was just trying to figure out what I want to do. But at the same time, my parents, was super against it about me going in the military. And that was another conflict, because the fact that they just absolutely did not, want me to join the military. They just did not understand this whole concept. And, as a parent, they for them, it's hard to like let their baby go. Like, I can't let my son go, Yeah.
So they were worried as much about your safety as they were about you not necessarily going to UC Berkeley or something like that.
For sure, for sure. Because around that time, the war was going on. That was given. It was 2001, December. We were already went to Afghanistan the following year, and on top of that, like my dad would ask me, okay, so you want to go to the Army? What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to become a Army Airborne Ranger. I watched Black Hawks Down that time. I watched the Band of Brothers. Full Metal Jacket, and my dad was like, no, you're not, I'm not just gonna let you enlist and become, go to war right away and then put your life on the line. And then because like I mentioned, I joined at 17, so they wanted me, they pretty much, my dad made struck a deal. He says, I'll sign the paper, I'll let you enlist in the Army, but I get to pick your MOS, I get to pick the job you're gonna go. And, at the 17 at that time, I didn't know that, I can just wait till I was 18 to do it. So, of course, I respect my dad, love my dad, say, okay, I'll let you pick the job, then I can go to the Army.
And what did he pick?
He picked the good old aviation, helicopter mechanics. He was like, you got at least require some sort of good electrical skills or some sort of like mechanics was a great skill set to have too, especially in the aviation field. And, knowing my dad and my dad's friends who were like aviation mechanic, they'll like talk to me about it and like the hours, like the money you can make after you're getting out and all these stuff. So of course I didn't know nothing about aviation, but I had to score, I scored pretty high on my ASVAB, and I just say, okay, I'll do that, but it's crazy, but everything worked out, even though it's not the job that I necessarily like, but it definitely, going that route in the aviation field, still able to make me able to give me certain schools or special skills that are required, which is pretty cool.
Which is something that you could use afterwards, but your father got the benefit that you would actually be safe, that you wouldn't be on the front line, you'd be back home waiting for the helicopter to return.
Yeah, like for me, it's instead of being in the front line, we're in a combat situation environment. I'm more of a on the base, they call it the FOB, observation base, where you're a little bit more safer. You're not getting shot at. You're not getting being blown up by IEDs or vehicle IEDs, BVET. The things that you have to worry about is rockets and different types of mortars lobbing over the the perimeters and stuff like that where we're staying at, for sure. Yeah.
So you were supposed to be a little bit safer, but then you ended up losing your leg while you were in military service. So how did that happen if you were supposed to be safer?
Yeah, what are the odds, right? So, I deployed to Iraq in 2006, 2007. And when I came back a little bit afterwards, like in 2009, I got stationed in Savannah at that time already. I deployed to Iraq with the 25th ID unit, which is out of Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. And when I got PCS to Savannah, Georgia, and I got attached to 3rd Infantry Division, 3rd ID, Rock of the Marne. And we were getting ready to go to Afghanistan. Like it was like November that time, 2009, November, we're supposed to go to Afghanistan. But in March, I got my motorcycle accident. Me and 4 other NCOs, non-commissioned officers, were 4 riding buddies. We were just riding down to Jacksonville, Florida, and was coming back from Jacksonville, Florida to Savannah. And that's on Interstate 95. I got hit and pretty much closed one chapter and then opened up another, which I had no idea then, Yeah.
Wow. So you got hit. I mean, that's got hit on the highway. Like that's a big deal, right? You're lucky that you just lost a leg.
Oh yeah, for sure. For me, it's definitely, I'm very fortunate to walk out just a leg amputations. I definitely thought I was not going to make it, because I still remember the accident like it was yesterday. Still have like that type of like the, you know, that memories of the smell, the tires, and everything else. Yes, so for when it struck me, and then eventually I lost control of my motorcycle due to the impact, and it was ejected. I still felt, I knew, me, rolling on the ground, everything else, and luckily where the accident happened, where I was struck, was in a big middle of the field, like grassy field, instead of like a concrete barrier or a cement ground or something like that. Mm-hmm.
So what happened? Was the truck just changing lanes or something like that, and didn't see you, or how did the accident happen?
Yeah, no, it was between, the accident was me and in the vehicle, that it was a regular sedan 4-door car, and she just didn't see me, and I was on the right hand side, and I believe she had an exit coming up about a mile down the road, and then she was trying to change her lane to mine, didn't see me, lost her, trying to change her lane back to the center lane where she was at, but fishtail, you can tell she lost control of her vehicle, and then eventually came back to me. At that time, I kind of just froze. I probably could have done some safety maneuver ways to avoid her, but I just thought that she was going to hit me right away, so I didn't react, because I just kind of blank or spaced out. So when the vehicle came back and hit me, it happened so quickly, and bam, next thing you know, we're in the scene of the accident, or in the field. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. And so you lost your leg above the knee, is that right?
Yeah. So eventually, 2 months later or so, they amputated my leg below the knee first, but they just couldn't save my leg, or they couldn't close my wound below the knee due to the infections and the way I was a skinny guy. I'm still a skinny guy. They just couldn't have enough skin to kind of wrap this up. And they just say, hey, man, the orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Buckingham, he says, I think the best is to go above the knee. That way you'll be a little bit better off, as far as getting the wound closed up and everything. Mm-hmm.
The safety part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
You're going to the Paralympics for the third time. How did you get into hockey? I mean, you said you grew up in California. You're in San Antonio now. How did you get into hockey?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting little story behind that. For me, when I was in Taiwan, the sports that was really big and popular was baseball, and then basketball, but baseball was just huge. So I was a huge baseball fanatic, and growing up. And when I came to the stateside, there was definitely different sports that I never knew, or I didn't know how to play. Football was definitely one of them, then hockey. And hockey was something that around 5th grade, that it became very popular due to the Mighty Ducks, the movie Mighty Ducks. And when I watched Mighty Ducks, just like I watched different type of sports movies, like The Sandlot or like Angels in the Outfield, Mighty Ducks was something that was like really interesting to me. And I was like, man, that would be cool to play that particular sport. And at that time, it became really popular in the Bay Area, inline hockey or roller hockey. And that's when I kind of got into roller hockey first at the parking recs, YMCA after school things. And there was like a group of kids that started playing for their hobby and reasons. So I started joining them and just kind of got into it and played for fun. And next thing you know, like I realized I can't skate. I have no good footwork. And they were like, let's get you in front of the net, And I was thinking like, oh, that's so cool. They still want me to play. It's really like, they just want an extra body to get shot at, So that's how I really got into hockey. Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's awesome. So you became the target, the goalie, but you had to like it though. I mean, like if you're going to be a goalie, you have to like that, because they're shooting at you and they're shooting hard and it can hurt. And what made you like being a goalie?
Yeah. And so that was the thing. It's like scoring goal was cool. I tried the roller thing and everything else. But when I got into the net and able to kind of just like stopping some pucks and all these things, And I started like really like started loving this position particularly. And on top of that, the guy that really got me into it, his name is Richard Solomon. You know, he was a hockey fanatics, you know, and he started like taking me, you know, under his wing, went to the house to show a bunch of you know, 50 great saves, you know, from like the 90s, you know, all these things. And I'm like watching Chris Osgood, Dominic Hasek, you know, like making these miraculous saves. And I was just like, wow, that's super cool. Like, you know, they're like, you know, Richard telling me like, you know, goalies are the game changer, the momentum changers, and all these different things. So in a way, and I'm also a weird guy, I guess you want to say. So like, you know, goalies have their own little different entity of like mindset and thinking. And in a way that just kind of makes sense to me that like, hey, I like the oohs and ahs, like the disappointment of the fan, or people will be like thinking it's a goal and then they didn't go in, like robbing them and all these good stuff. And that became like my little mantra.
So the personality side of it, if you're a little bit different, do you become a goalie, or do you become a little bit different by virtue of being a goalie? Which way, the chicken and the egg thing, which one comes first?
Man, that's a good question. I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. I think it kind of goes, you know, vice versa. Like, you know, it has a little parallel and perpendicular index of it. Because you just gotta find out like what suits you. You know, like for me, you know, in basketball, I love, you know, being, you know, score and going in the basket, right? But then like in this particular sport, it's like I'd rather be the one that makes the saves, you know, I guess. So you just got to have a different type of mindset. Yeah. So, yeah.
Is this where the beard's coming from a little bit? Is this part of the display of your originality too?
Oh, that's hilarious. No, this is like, because, you know, as a veteran, so veteran has this thing, you know, when you come out of the military, veterans like to grow their beard, right? You know, they have to grow their facial hair and all these things. But like for me, I can't grow a facial hair. I try, you know, like I try to grow a mustache, but look at this thing right now. I'm sure you can see it. It's like a koi fish. There's like nothing in the middle, and then like, and that's it, you know? So somehow, some way, this chin hair that I started like back in like 2012 or something like that, it's 2012, and look how much has gone. Not that far, not that far, but I call it the wise chew. You know, the longer this become, the wiser I become, and just the laughter I become, the louder the laugh I too, like you know, like a Kill Bill character that throws his little Fu Manchu to the back.
That is awesome. Now, you're talking about the personality of being a goalie. How would your teammates describe you? How would they describe you as a teammate, as a person, as a goalie?
I don't know. I think, you know, for me, I always try to, you know, I'm just trying to be myself, you know? So, and I think the biggest thing from growing up to even now at 35 years old, 35 years young, you know, comedy or a jokester or goofball is definitely part of me. I'm still like a little kid at heart. And I'm the type of that, you know, always try to line up the mood if the locker room or we're in a tough situation or after a bad practice or something like that. I'm trying to be the guy that's like funny or different things, you know. And so I think my teammates enjoy that, as far as like me being myself, being the goofball, and not taking things very serious when people are taking things too serious, you know. But there's times that I'm definitely, you know, not smiling, not you know, being like a goofball, and that's when they're like, we need the laughable Jen back or something like that, you know. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of hard when you're the goalie too, right? Because if you get one shot on you and that one shot goes in, then things are bad, right? Whereas, you know, you can get 30 shots and 30 saves and one goes in, and it's like, and it still could be bad. So it's kind of like you have to maintain this sense of like not really remembering what happened last. Like you're just in that moment, which is a hard place to be, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, wow, like goalies is goaltending something for me personally that it's a position that you will always learn over the years as you play this game longer, the longer you play in this position, the more you understand not only about the game, but yourself. And for sure that being a goaltender, being a netminder, your mental process is different. And the focus of that level is totally different as well. And for me, I'm very fortunate that as a, playing on the team for the last few seasons, for the last 2 games, right? I got the chance to watch my great teammate, my good friend of mine as well, Steve Cash, to see how the different type of focus level he becomes. He is a great, energetic, and he's a great guy, like super fun and super happy, super laughable, interactive person to be around. But when it comes to like game time, when it comes to like that moment where you gotta like be this dime size focus, I like to call it, like he is just totally on it, or he's just a totally different person. And then eventually, gradually, I started to understand that, and knowing that role of like the amount of different pressure that it can put on you, but at the same time, you just can't dwell on like, oh, a bad goal and everything else. It's gonna happen. It's easier said than done, right? But it is definitely a different ways of one of my former teammates like to call it, be a goldfish, short-term memory, right? Like, it's what all these things surrounding you, all these, whether it's cameras, whether it's the fans or your whoever is going through your head, it's not gonna help you stop the shot or the shot that's coming next. So that's the easy way to say it.
So was it easier to be the goofball when you were the backup to the best guy in the world? And now that the best guy in the world has retired and you're moving into the #1 position, does that make you change who you are? Or are you like, this is who I am, this is what brought me here?
Chris, I have to say, I got the chance to look at your background, all these things. You're a badass athlete yourself, so, for you to ask that question, man, you definitely got me there. Yeah, like, because for sure that, me being from a backup per se to a starting goalie per se, it's a totally different role. And it's something that I'm still learning as we go. And yes, it is definitely a different type of focus and responsibilities and all these things that you have to dial in even a little bit more. And I even just for example, we had a border series not too long ago, a few months ago against Canada, where I was playing that game, and the first game we play, it was it could have been a decisive between us or Canada. Probably could have went to the overtime or a shootout, but that it was just a little type of like a little small focus, I just got distracted and I just wasn't dialed in, and bam, like I let in a bad goal, and I felt like the loneliest person in the world, and that itself, I just wasn't sure. You start having doubts and all these things, and luckily I have great teammates and support, my managers as well, the coaches. And then that somewhere down that line, the next day, it was saying that, hey, sometimes like, this is who you are. We love who we are. We love you as Jen Lee, but there are times, either for 60 minutes of the game or for that particular thing, you got to be somebody different. And it's okay to be a different person, because that's when you gotta thrive or excel or whatever that it comes, or whatever all these things that you from training, from other games, from club games or different games you play, you got to be able to know that and then put it all together. And again, that's why I said it's something that I learned as we go, and then kind of finally gave me that life of like, wow, so yeah.
Well, there is a wow for you. I mean, it's interesting to listen to you because you're talking about the goofball mentality. You're talking about the goldfish mentality, but also over your shoulder, we see the Buddhist iconography, right? As well, where studying to be in that moment. How is your studying of Buddhism? How does that help you in the crease?
Yeah, for me, for the longest time, like I grew up, not, per se as like, the the perfect family and all these stuff, right? And I have different shares of experience where either I was, racially bullied because I was different, because I couldn't speak the common language or English, right? And different things. And then over the years, I realized like I developed this type of like anger or temperaments, and then to do the military, right, where military doesn't really talk about your inner feelings, right? You can go to the deployments, or you can go have a bad day, whatever, but they just want you to, you'll hear this a lot, is suck it up and drive on, or just kind of like, don't talk about this. We're not going to cry over his shoulder. Like nobody's going to talk about, that. So a lot of times over the years down the road, and then my accident happened, I have this like constant angerish or anger of me, and where I can snap, or I can just, I can be goofball if everything's okay. But there's certain things that, if it doesn't go my way, the frustration, the negativity, and all these things, and for the longest time, everyone, my parents, my dad, my sisters, or even my mentors would say, hey, like, Jen, you got to learn how to meditate. And I was like, ain't nobody's going to learn. Nobody got time for that, right? That's the first thing we all like to talk about. Ain't nobody got time for that. We're not going to meditate. I don't have 5 minutes. I can't sit down for 20 minutes, But then, in 2018, I went through a pretty, in a way, something that hit me, and knowing the fact that if I continue to go this route, I know down the road, either when I'm 40 or 50, I'm probably not going to live past that. Either I'm going to hurt somebody, or I'm going to hurt myself. So that's when I really started developing, started to studying about the Buddhism. And one thing for that particular is the meditation helps. Now, meditation is not a religious thing. Meditation it's a totally different entity, but it helps you understand, helps yourself and discover that yourself, as far as, you got to be able to be all in one from time to time, as in everything that's going on where the world's spinning. If you take a moment to relax and understand why breathing is so important, then you realize that how to control that of your own angers and able to express that. And it helps me as well as far as the being a goaltender too, because there is a lot going on, where you said, where it can be a tough position if you don't understand it quite enough.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? I mean, the idea of the meditation, the quiet, and the idea of being a goalie, because it's such a ballistic move, right? I mean, like, you have to be able to move like on the moment. It's like, well, you don't need to mellow out, like you need to be jacked up. And it's like, no, you need to be mellowed out and like figure out what's going on, so that then you can react without having that resistance necessarily. We have to take that step back, because we started talking about how because you said how you got into inline hockey and how you got into being a goalie. But then after your accident, after you lost your leg, did you even know that there was Paralympic hockey, that there was sled hockey?
No, I absolutely do not. I did not. I didn't even know what Paralympic was. And in fact, prior to me losing my leg or being injured, and I always say this too, whenever I talk to, how do you say it? Able bodies, I didn't know what disability is. The most knowledge I got was like, hey, either your grandparents has a disabilities, or they're older, or you see the handicap sign, right, and all these things. So I had like no knowledge of this whatsoever. So the Paralympic was totally a different brand new things to me. And on top of that, I was very fortunate that when I was hurt, I was in a situation where, the war and the surge, and then the war was going on, and that's when our nations was putting more resources to the wounded and injured service veterans, or the guys that's like hurting right down from the combat zone. And they're in the Paralympics happened to be one of the programs they putting a lot of resources into that as well, where they helping veterans to, or transitioning from a soldier to an athlete, or helping them in that therapeutic way. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, but where did hockey come into it? Because I mean, some of the stuff is fairly obvious, right? It's like, okay, well, we want you to get back in shape. Do you want to go ride a bike? Do you want to, like, you could swim, you could do whatever, but hockey, how did hockey happen?
Yeah, so I didn't think I was gonna play hockey again, especially not ice hockey, right? Sled hockey is on the ice. So when I got hurt and got transferred to San Antonio, Texas to begin my rehabilitation at the Center for the Intrepid, there are a lot of different therapeutic sports, adaptive sports, and one of them was sled hockey. So I tried wheelchair basketball, I tried hand cycling, I tried sitting volleyball, adaptive swimming, and sled hockey was a sport that was started by the nonprofit organizations locally here in San Antonio called Operation Comfort, and they have merged from partner or worked out a deal with the Fort Sam Houston or Brooke Army Medical Hospital, as far as like, hey, we want the injured service members to come out and then either try sled hockey or different programs they have to offer. So that, when I heard about sled hockey, I immediately thought about the inline hockey I used to play, and I was like, oh wow, this is cool, and I was just thinking it's like a wheelchair hockey or something, right? Just they were like, no, like you're going to be on the ice, and it's a full contact sport. There's checking, and it's all regulation. The regulation, there's no rules changing to adapt to this, and I was like, no way, like and I was definitely dumbfounded. I was like a little kid again. Like I saw the rest of the patients that went to the ice rink, and there's even already players that's already been playing before, or patients that have already been playing for a year or two, and I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. Yeah.
And that was it. And you guys it's the only contact sport in the winter time, right? So you guys get to hit each other. Was that part of the intrigue for you?
Yes, absolutely. Because it was definitely a lot of people sign up for the sport because they were like, you had people who injure, and you look at that time at the rehab center, there was a lot of guys who were, wounded, combat wounded. And there are days that there are good days or bad days. And, there's a lot of frustration, myself included, about, if I couldn't walk or whatever it is, if I'm having phantom pains and all these things. So a lot of patients were signing up because they were like, oh, you can hit somebody? Heck yeah. I'm tired of like, so-and-so, or, I can't believe he's complaining or she's doing that. So like, we were just like wanting to like get our aggressions out on the ice, and then like had no like knowledge of like the game whatsoever. But we just knew that hitting was part of it. And that's like something that we were like wanted to do for sure.
How did you end up back in the goal again?
Oh, I immediately signed up for goalie. I was I know, right? I'm talking about all these like hitting and stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna play goalie. And then and that was the funniest thing. Chris Leverkusen, which he's been a Operation Comfort employee. He's a combat wounded guy as well. When he was the one that's like goes around the hospital or goes on around the rehab center asking if anybody wants to sign up for this. And I told him, I said, yeah, I want to play, sure. And he was like, oh, what position you're thinking? And I was like, I want to play goalie. He was like, he kind of chuckled, and I was like, what's up? He was like, oh, well, good luck, because people want to play goalie, but nobody sticks with it. Normally people just, after 2 practices, they're all like, that's it, I'm done. This is the most boring position ever, and I was like, well, I played goalie before and all these things. And he laughed again. He was like, and I was like, what's so funny? He was like, well, a lot of people talk about they played goalie in the past, and again, they just, after 2 practices or so, they just, picked up and left or become a forward or a defenseman. And I was like, okay, but I stuck with it. And yeah, I guess here I am.
You didn't quit after 2 practices. What's the mentality? I mean, you guys as a team, because you're coming out of the military, right? And then you're joining a team where, one, you said you get a chance to hit, right? Yeah. But it's also, is it a brotherhood that's similar to the brotherhood that you had when you were in the military?
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing too, for not only hockey is a team sport, but it's also the camaraderie. You know, hopefully I said it right because English is my second language. Sorry. So
it's great.
Oh, thank you. It's the camaraderie. It's like the locker room. You know, it's locker room is such a, you know, such a dojo or a, you know, save heaven place where, for me at that time, where we go in and then you have a bunch of, different people from all over the branches, right? You got Army, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Navy, right? They're just, we're all suiting up, gearing up, and we're just bashing each other's branch, or we're just talking smacks. And then you start like getting back into that old unit kind of feeling, where, when I was in my squad or platoon and all these things, and we'll just like talk about like different types of different, things, conversations. And it kind of give us that similarity, at least for me. And it definitely did with other teammates. And Rico Roman, where, he's a club teammate here at the San Antonio Rampage, but, and then we made the national team together as well. He can say the same thing. It's the camaraderie where we're like, just bring that cohesiveness together, the whole cohesions. Then we go out there and we're trying to kick butt, trying to kick everybody's butt. Obviously that didn't happen.
Is it where you recognize that you'd recovered? I mean, like you went through this traumatic thing of losing your leg. Yeah. Was this when you came back and you're in the locker room and you're like, oh, okay, I'm me? Did you have that realization anytime?
Yeah, for me, part of it for sure, it's like, that it gave me another sense of a goal. It gave me a sense of like a different challenges that I can thrive, or I can not thrive, but I can try to achieve now. Where in the military, for me, I thought about becoming a lifer or doing my 20 years or why not, right? And then losing my leg and then becoming, now you're just have no idea what's going to happen. Can I even walk again? Can I even run again? And all these things, you lose that. You lose that sense of like who you are. So the identity was like, wow, man, now I find something and it's taking my mind off like whatever I'm worrying about, but at the same time, I was still something I mentioned earlier. I was still going through a different things of like anguish and all that. But at least at that time, that moment, that wasn't like a huge thing, Mm-hmm.
What's the character? I mean, you've told us that you're a bit of a goofball sometimes, but you're a thoughtful goofball. I mean, there might be a goofball, but then you're a meditating goofball. I mean, there's a whole lot in this goofball, really. What's the character of your team and your teammates?
Well, it depends. If you're talking about the club teammates or like the national team,
U.S. team. Yeah, so like the Paralympic team, the people you'll be going to China with, the guys.
Yeah, it's I'm very, very fortunate. I was able to play on the team since 2010, and a bit of slight hiccup after 2014. But for me being a rookie to now, the dynamic is definitely different. But one thing for sure, like playing alongside like guys that's been around too, like Rico Roman, Kevin McKee. Josh Pauls, we definitely have our own individual, even former teammates, Steve Cash. We all have our own individual of ways of like coming out to be either personable, likable, fun, funny in different ways, So in that sense, it's just a different. We have that, and that's why it's so important sometimes that we understand like the ultimate goal and what it is, and we're willing to play for one another. We're willing to say, hey, I'm not gonna waste a day. I'm not gonna goof off, or not gonna spend the time not just putting the work in, because I know my brothers are working their butt off back home, and because we all share a common goal is to win this together. And very fortunate we've been on a pretty good, positive winning side,
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? Because during COVID, a bunch of your teammates settled in Nashville, Tennessee, right?
Yeah. So believe it or not, they've been there prior to COVID. A lot of guys they started moving to Nashville about 2-3 years ago. and they realized that Nashville was going to be the next hub for sled hockey, or at least for the U.S. sled hockey national guys. We have moved and bounced around. Prior to 2014, we were in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center, and in 2018 we moved to Chicago. Prior to going to Pyeongchang, we're in Chicago, and then now for 2022 we are in training in Nashville. So it's a different movement type of things, and we kind of agree about like where we want to play, where we want to like reside and train. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is interesting because Nashville obviously with the Predators is an NHL city, but you don't, like Chicago is one of those places you go, okay, original six team, right? So yeah. They've been involved in hockey for a long time, whereas Nashville's not necessarily the kind of place that you think of. But it's interesting just I was looking at some of the Instagram stuff, and I saw like Brody's down there where they were actually playing outside. They got a cold snap down in Nashville, and they're playing outside in their sleds and doing a little bit of skitching behind some cars that looked like in their in their thing. How much is the fun part of what you guys do as a team? How much does that bring you together when things get critical?
Yeah, I think one thing for at least, speaking for myself here, like one thing for me that's always like, if there's different types of things going on, whether is this pandemic or whatnot, sled hockey is definitely in a way to bring us together, where we kind of just put everything else on the side, and then we can play hockey competitively, but at the same time at the end of the day, like fun. And you mentioned like Brody is there, Declan's there. Brody and Declan, they made the team 2014 as well, where they were like 15, 16. So like watching them growing up, yeah, they were the diaper lines that they call it, right? And like they were like one of the youngest guys, but like they pretty much like were dominating, in the games at that time. And just to watch them grow, to who they are and becoming who they are, it is just a phenomenal way. It's cool. It's like, as a older guy, you're like, oh, I'm so proud of them, ha ha. So in that sense, like it's, but we always know that, like, because we understand the fun part of it, but we also understand the amount of the work ethic you got to put in, and that's what really kind of brings out like who we are, and understand that bond of like knowing that Declan did not stop grinding, even though he became maybe one of the best or the best guy in the world, and Brody's right behind him and all these things. But it doesn't give them, or Jack Wallace, but it doesn't give them like the break or the benefit of like, oh, I'm the best. Like, no, like the grind doesn't stop, and then it gives us, the guys who are a little bit older, right, to understand that too, where it's like, man, these kids are going full throttle. So there's no break between for us too, because military guys, we don't have the hockey background. Well, we didn't play when I sled hockey when we were 5. So we're learning as we go. Meanwhile, we're trying to like figure out how to walk, or figure out different types of obstacles in the hands. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about a little bit the Chinese team that you'll see in Beijing. But if you're going to win the gold medal is going to go through Canada, isn't it?
It will probably be like the most likely repeated. Yeah. The history between, and hockey wise, I'm talking about, speaking, Canada and US, right? There's always that rivalry, and in sled hockey, boom, it's the same thing. They go as back as far as, when Stevie was in net, since Torino, and at that time they were like the dominant power and all these things, So yeah, that's pretty much like what everyone is kind of like want to set up the stage to be, as far as like the gold medal match. But you can't count out Russia, or I'm sorry, RPC, the pretty much Russian Paralympic, but you can't call them Team Russia for some reason. But then there's different type of China is a sleeper team. I know for a fact that they can just come out full swing, where upset everybody, all these things. And this happened when we're in Sochi, where we didn't know Russia was going to be that great, but then they just was on a different team every year. They just getting better and better and better. So yeah, you just never know, but that's the goal. Our goal is to be in a gold medal match, and whoever we play, we know it's going to be tough. We know it's going to be competitive, and, hoping it's going to be a great hockey game. That's for sure.
Will you get some spicy food when you're in Beijing? You think you'll get some in the village?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't know I don't know they will offer spicy food, but I hope so. Sichuan, it's a different type of spicy. The Chinese definitely eat a lot of, very spicy food because of where they are. The region is, it's very cold. And I grew up eating very spicy myself. I have this almost like the same taste bud as my mom. My mom used to love the Southern East Asian style from the Thai, the Burmese. So I'm hoping for some like good spicy food and stuff like that. And also McDonald's too. I want to make sure, I want to try their McDonald's. I'm just kidding.
Well, you have to put your Cantonese to good use. If you're not getting the spicy food in the village, you're going to have to find somebody there and go, hey, I need some of this. Can you get me something spicy? Will you do that?
Well, I mean, I hope so, but Cantonese is not my primary, it's not, Cantonese is tough. It's a totally different dialect, but my Mandarin, hopefully.
Oh, your Mandarin, I'm sorry. Your Mandarin.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, no worries. But my Mandarin is definitely, hopefully I can able to spit out some Mandarin lingos to them and help them hook me up. If not, I have in the past, in the World Championship or World Sled Challenge tournaments, Team Korea. I got to know and I got to make friends with a lot of Korean teams. And there were times, during a jet lag, we can't sleep, they can't sleep. And I'm Facebook messaging Cam and be like, hey, you guys got some noodles or something like that? And then hook me up with some spicy noodles because they know, we go way back.
How about your teammates? Are there any of your teammates who are going to follow you in your food excursions?
Yeah, there's definitely a few. Rico Roma eats spicy for sure. Travis Dotson, he's a huge spicy guy. Brody Roybo as well. But you gotta keep the spicy food away from Declan or Kevin McKean, that's for sure, because they will sweat by eating just jalapeno peppers. They're jalapenos.
So do you give them a little bit of a hard time? Are you talking some smack about the spicy food to Declan and those guys?
Nah, I don't need to, because we got enough teammates to give them crap about it. I just laugh. I just go, you're sweating bullets. I sweat too. Don't get me wrong. When I eat spicy food, I'm pouring down sweat, but I'm literally enjoying the endorphins. I guess you want to say. Well, the endorphins is enjoying myself. I don't know how you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly. You can run a marathon or you can eat spicy food, right? You get the same endorphin rush.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw a video, and this is going out on a limb. Do you have a goat for a pet?
No. So what happened was we were doing a video for the pandemic, right? And then our media, JG Jen Green wanted us to say something positive and then a message, right, to let them know that, hey, things are okay and all these things. And my neighbor, which I have a very awesome neighbor next door and across the street, Rodrigo, his kid, Leo, was doing some pet sitting with his sister, different type of farm animal pet sitting, and they are able to have a goat. And I was like, oh man, that's perfect. I want to can I borrow this goat for 5 minutes to do this, this video. And no one really paid attention until they were like, Jen, do you have a goat? And they all thought it was a puppy. That was a dog. And I was like, nah, I just happen to randomly have a goat. Yeah, I don't have a goat.
You don't have a goat. Okay.
No, sorry. Yeah. To keep it short.
All right. So let's get you out on this. What are you expecting? I mean, this is going to be your first games where you're going to be the #1 goalie, most likely. Your team is going for 4th gold medal in a row. What are you expecting as you're going into Beijing?
Yeah, something for sure that our coach tell us, and our teammates, our captains, and things that I learned over the years is we expect the unexpected, right? But at the same time, we can't control what's going to happen, but we can control the way we prepare, we train, and everything else. So, for me, I know my teammates has my back, and I will play and my butt off for my teammates. And then when it comes to those games, it is, there's definitely different ways where there's, you call it the media, or people that expect us to either to win or lose, whatever it is, right? We can't control that. We only can control what happens on the ice. And that's the only thing that can really respond to that, where, we're hoping that we do everything the right way. We're healthy, and that's most importantly with this whole COVID thing. And when it comes to dialed in, it's time to kick butt. It's time to get it done.
So no expectations. You're just going to bring everything you have and hope that it's the best.
Yes, sir.
I like it. Jen, thank you so much for joining us. This will be really cool for us to get a chance to watch you. 8 teams in the tournament, is that right?
Yep, 8 teams. Yep, total.
8 teams in the tournament. Okay, and so we mentioned some of the big ones: the Canadians, the Chinese, the Russian, the RPC. Sorry, I almost said it too. Yeah. So this is it. This is it. It's going to happen. Good luck, and thank you so much for joining us here.
No, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Again, thank you for considering me. It's an honor to be here. And, I was able to check you, not check you out, but, I really appreciate your philosophy of something in the context. You said it's not about what happens, with you. It's about what you do with it, and it's a very similar philosophy. When I kind of start figuring out, it's, in the end, it's up to you, right? So, it's up to you to make things happen. It's up to me to take that walk, take that first step, prosthetic leg from crutches, prosthetic legs, and everything else. So, what you do and what you do in your organization is super awesome. It's great. And I'm glad we crossed paths. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. And it's a little bit like meditation, right? When you take that anger and take the time to breathe and recognize that you can react in a different ways. So no, this is awesome, and look forward to seeing you in person. Hopefully it won't happen in Beijing, but we will watch you on television in Beijing. To all of you who've tuned in, thank you for tuning in. We hope that you've enjoyed it. If you like what you see here, please tell your friends about it. We're here every Wednesday, so you can tune in and see another great guest. It will eventually be a podcast. You'll be able to see it on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all the places you find it. The greatest gift you can give us is to tell your friends, to like us, to follow us, and we will see you next time. And Jen, best of luck, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Chris. Yep. Hopefully we'll see each other. We'll cross paths down the road.
Sounds good. Take care.